Welcome to Noble Warrior. My name is CK Lin. Noble Warriors, where I interview hearts and entrepreneurs about their spiritual disciplines. We'll deconstruct a mindset, mental models, actionable tactics, so you can take them and engineer your life with more impact and fulfillment. If you have any entrepreneur friends who are reinventing themselves, who could use more inspiration, please share this episode with them. They'll thank you for it. My guest is Jevon McCormick. He was born the son of a black pimp father and a white orphan mother. He's made millions in the stock market, even though he didn't go to college. He serves as a board member for Conscious Capitalism. Today, he's the CEO of Scribe Media, a multi-million-dollar publishing company with more than 1,700 authors, including members of the Nobel Peace Prize Committee, Nassim Taleb, David Goggins, whose blockbuster book, Can't Hurt Me, has sold more than 2 million copies. Jevon and I, we talked about why he said negativity never solved anything, in spite of being raised in a negative environment that could easily lead to cynicism. How he found his calling in business at the back of his father's car. Why he focused on God, health, family, business, and investing only, and is cutthroat with everything else. How he broke the intergenerational pattern to create his greatest accomplishment, that is his family. How he uses gratitude to bring himself and his employees back to focus. Why his unstable childhood became the source of his extraordinary EQ and social intelligence. Why confidence was all he had and how that brought him success and fulfillment. Why he printed only 5 copies of his book instead of making it public first. And why he believes listening and surrounding yourself with great people far smarter than you is the secret to running a multi-million-dollar business. And why he thinks CEOs are over-celebrated, and why people process and profit and going 3 layers deep is the way to go. He also shared with us his 3-step advice to young people who are reinventing themselves during this time. Please enjoy my conversation with Jevon JT McCormick, the CEO of Scribe Media. Please welcome Jevon McCormick.
My man CK, what's going on, sir?
Thank you so much for being here, Jevon. I so appreciate you. From the moment that I heard about you, the moment you told your stories, and some of the time that we converse with each other, you're the real deal. But if you can bring us back to a little bit, for those that don't really know your story, bring us back to the circumstances that you were born into and how you faced the worst of humanity. Just paint a little picture for us. That would be a really great place for us to start.
You touched on a little bit there in the introduction. Yeah, my father was a black pimp and drug dealer in the 1970s. And in addition to that, my father also fathered 23 children. So I'm one of 23. My mother was an orphan. She grew up in a 1950s institutional orphanage where the kids were routinely beat, abused, neglected. When my mom turned 17 years old, they gave her $20, a small suitcase, and they said, "Good luck to you. There's a world." And she had never been outside those 4 walls. So that's what I came into the world to. And I grew up in extreme poverty. Now, when I say extreme poverty, U.S. poverty, because being poor in the United States is a lot different than being poor in some other countries. But for here in the United States, we grew up very poor. I was that kid that at times I would eat out of the trash can to have something to eat. I was that kid that because I got free welfare lunch at school, I would eat Friday at lunch and I wouldn't eat again until Monday at lunch. Oh man, I was in and out of juvenile 3 different times as a kid. One of my dad's prostitutes sexually molested me from the ages of 6, 7, 8 years old. I've got a GED. I don't have a college degree, and here I am, man. And so there's a lot more in between there, but there's the base of it.
I mean, it sounds like a movie, literally. It sounds like the pursuit of happiness, The time when you were stuck in the subway, it sounds like, part of the Mad Men episode, flashing back. But the way you tell it is you're just rattling off some script. I mean, how did you, I guess, how did you maintain this optimism? Because, I feel it, like you are a beacon of light. And it's so easy for you to go down to a space of cynicism and no possibility. How did you go from that, in my mind, darkness to, the positive person that you are today?
CK, I feel a lot of it is just you don't know what you don't know. So at times I didn't know I was poor. It's just this was the circumstances. There were other kids around me who were in the same circumstances. So a lot of it was just, okay, this is where I am, and what do you do to make the most of it? And you found peace and happiness within some of that chaos and that fractured upbringing. Don't get me wrong, a lot of ugliness in between there as well. And I, like you said, it goes off as a script. Well, I look at it this way. It was my life. That's how I grew up. I am not a victim. I refuse to let my background allow me to be a victim. I can't change the past. I can't change any of it. I can't change who my father was. I can't change who my mother was. I'll even share this with you. I am truly the product of an abortion. What I mean by that is my mom had an abortion before she had me. The abortion was so bad, the second time she got pregnant, she made the choice to say, okay, I'm just going to give birth to this child versus have an abortion. I'm okay with that. That doesn't bother me. I've spoken with my mother and I've told her, you should have never had a child, and that's okay. She shouldn't have. She didn't. There were times where my mother and I were raising each other. We were learning things at the same time.
So I'm gonna leveling challenge you this a bit because the way you phrase is, you're like a walking Buddha almost, right? Hey, all these circumstances happen. I'm just gonna rise above. I agree with you 100%. And in that moment, when people are calling you names, when they're being racist at you, when they're beating you, when you're hungry, when you're humiliated, when you're being, sexually molested. I mean, like it didn't just happen, right? So that was a dark space. And when you're receiving all of those abuse, the worst of humanity has to offer, how did you go from that darkness to equanimity and ultimately to forgiveness, to love? Like that is, in my mind, the extraordinary path that you took on.
It's funny. You rolled off. You said the name calling, and I hadn't thought about this story in quite some time. I remember as a kid, because I'm half white, half black, and I remember as a kid, white people didn't like me because I was half black. Black people didn't like me because I was half white. I was never black enough. I was never white enough. But one particular time, kids would always tease me, call me Oreo cookie, call me zebra, chocolate vanilla swirl, color confused, half breed. I mean, all anything you can think that has, they can mix
Yeah,
that
no
up.
mercy, just
Yeah, there was
boom.
zero.
Yeah.
I walked in the class one time, and at my desk, this kid had put, I'm going to show my age on this. This kid had put a Polaroid picture on my desk, and there was a picture of a zebra. Man, crushed me because there wasn't anything I could say. I had learned to be, quick-witted and make fun of other kids and joke and go back and forth. But when I saw that picture, I'm half white, half black, and you call me a zebra, and I just remember I felt just decimated at the time. But you want to say, how did I rise above? I took all those little things that were happening to me and going on, and I always found a way to, how do I use these for positive? How do I get better? How do I learn from these circumstances? What one story that I've recently opened up with, and because I never told this story before, I was embarrassed of it. My first lesson in business came from a dark place, and it was one weekend my father had me, and we were out collecting money from prostitutes. I was sitting in the front seat. I just remember it was cold outside, and we pull up to the first lady, and he cracks the window. It's every time I tell the story, I can smell the heater in the car every time I tell the story. So he cracked the window, and she slid through a stack of cash, and she asked my dad, "Hey, can I come in? I made my count, I made my money." And he's like, "No, no, no, you're on a roll." And he encouraged her, "Get back out there, keep it going." Real positive. And so he rolled up the window, we drove off, and we went over to the next lady, and she slid her money in, and it was short. Her stack wasn't as big. And my dad lost his damn mind. "Get your ass back out there." And they called her every name you can think of. And I remember when he rolled up the window and we drove off, I said to myself, and I'm 9, I remember this. I said, "I wonder if I treated the prostitutes better and let them keep part of the money, could I have more prostitutes and make more money in volume because they'd want to work with me? And then ultimately I'd be the king pimp, if you will." And then I thought, okay, but wait a minute. A lot of other pimps are going to be mad because I'm going to take their women. And I was having this full-blown conversation with myself at 9 on how do you scale this business. And when I look back, I feel like I'm doing in life exactly what I was meant to do, which was business. And because at 9 years old with prostitutes, that was my early entry into the business world. And I wanted to know how you did it better. How do you put people first? How do you treat them better? How do you scale it? But to directly answer your question, I always tried to find the positives in negative situations. And I can go back so far as a kid and remember that, be it putting up the Christmas tree with my mom. We had this little 3-foot Christmas tree because we didn't have much money, and we literally had maybe 15 decorations, and my mom would have us hang up one decoration, stand back, look at it. And because it would take longer, and so it seems like we had more decorations, but that was a positive. And I always tried to find the positives in every negative situation that I was in.
Mm, I appreciate that. Um, I guess what I'm getting at is, so I'll make it personal also. It's when you're in a dark place, it's easy to train your inner dialogue, your inner narrative to say, "I'll show you," as a come
Mhm.
from place to do something, right? But the way I experience you is not that. It's not "I'll show you." Rather, it's, "Hey, learn from the positive, coming from love and compassion, and then use that as a source of fuel rather than I'll show you as a source of fuel." So I was curious to know how you, perhaps at one point you were in that "I'll show you," that source of fuel, to then you transition to, hey, coming from a place of love and empathy and compassion. So I was more curious of that internal narrative shift, if there was any.
The place of love and not feeling a desire to have to prove something, that really came later on in life, because everything for me was having to prove something, mainly to myself. It wasn't to anyone. It was to prove that, okay, I'm not going back to the hood, prove that I can make money, prove that I can figure this job out, prove that I can figure. It was always proving something to myself. It wasn't, I'll show you. It was more proving that I could do it, that regardless of the circumstances, I could do it. And here's what became very critical for me. I always believed if I saw someone else who had already done it, okay, then I can do it. And I always believed that. And regardless if it was true or not, I believed, I'm like, okay, they did it, so then why can't I do it? And it's even this, CK, even I've heard so many people say, well, it's not fair that a minority has to work 100 times harder than a white person to achieve the same success. And for me, I've always looked at it as, okay, great. It may not be fair, but if I got to work 100 times harder and I got to be 100 times better, that's exactly how I see it. I'm just 100 times better than you. So I'll make myself shine. And again, that's me. Where's the positive in this? Because I learned a long time ago, life isn't fair. It isn't fair. It's never going to be fair. So put that shit aside and focus on, okay, what are we going to accomplish with this?
Yeah, there's a phrase, don't wish it's easier, wish you're better. And
Yeah. Well,
that's what you've taken on.
even this, I, the dark place you talked about. If I go to my bed right now and I pull the covers over my head and I sit there and I say, okay, why me? Why was I born to a pimp father? Why am I one of 23 kids? Why was my mother an orphan? Why is it to this day I still don't know where my last name comes from? I have no clue. My mom got the last name McCormick in the orphanage, and we don't know where it comes from. So I can lay there and say, why? Doesn't change anything. I can't change the past. I can't change what I was born to, but I figured out early on, okay, I can change tomorrow. I can change the next day. I can change the next hour. And that became the focus. What can you change? And let's work on that, because I can't change who I was born to. I can't change my race. I, hell, God knows to this day, a lot of people out there probably don't like me. Oh well. And so I focus on what can I have a hand in changing.
Yeah. So if you don't mind getting into that, so I'll contextualize my question a bit. The internal dialogue, the tone of the internal voice determines one's quality of life. And sharing it personally, the tone my internal voice used to speak to me is this harsh critic. Nothing is ever good enough. And my experience of life was complete misery. Even though on the outside, I have all the achievement, the accomplishment, and all the beautiful things, right? And then I had to take on this journey of changing this tone, or tame rather, right? Transform this tone into more loving and nurturing, such that my experience of life is more fulfilling that way. So I'm curious to know, was there any, like, how does your internal voice speak to you,
Oh man,
such that
okay.
you show up so bright?
I appreciate that. This actually was developed in my childhood because of the harsh circumstances I grew up in. Because on any given day I was going to get in a fight, someone teased me, didn't like me, called me half breed, whatever, made fun of me because I had holes in my shoes, whatever the case. I remember I used to get teased a lot for having a white mother. I remember at times I used to be embarrassed of that. I used to be embarrassed that I had a white mom. Why? That was ridiculous. Um, but I remember I had to make a choice early on. You can wake up timid and meek in a weak mindset, or you can wake up confident. And at times, confidence was all I had. It was free, and it didn't cost me anything. And so it was okay. I'm going to be confident today. And confidence got me through life sometimes because it was all I had. I may not have had food. I may not have had money. We may not have had electricity, water, but I had confidence. And that's confidence got me through many a day. Because when you walk through that alley, you walk to school, you walk through some of those halls at school, all you had was confidence on your shoulder, because I didn't have the nice clothes. I didn't have lunch money. I didn't have a good home to go to, but damn it, I had confidence. And that's that confident even today. When I talk to myself, you ask me what's the internal dialogue. Um, One of positivity, one of confidence, one of belief. I don't hope, I don't wish, and I don't use the word luck. So I don't use hope, wish, or luck. Those three words were eliminated out of my vocabulary as a kid.
Mm, mm. What's the difference between bravado and confidence?
You're going to laugh at me because I don't even know what bravado means. Hey man,
Bravado is
I
in,
own it. I will. I don't run. I sit in meetings to this day, and I'll stop the meeting. I'm like, okay, what's that word mean? I don't even know what
no,
bravado means.
it's great. I appreciate. I mean, to me, that's a sign of someone who's confident. If someone who knows everything, pretty much for sure that this person is pretty insecure. So the fact that you shared, like, hey, I don't know what that means, shows real confidence. Bravado means like a empty like puff up when there's no substance in my mind,
Mm.
right? Versus in my mind, confident person, someone like you can easily say, "Hey, I don't know this. It's okay," right? It's because you're secure with who you are. So one is coming from a place of insecurity, the other is from a place of authentic security. So for you, I'm curious to know because you didn't have anything, right? And then yet you were able to be confident. So I was curious to know, was it bravado? Was it more like authentic confidence?
It was authentic confidence, so I'll dive a bit deeper into that. I realized um, when I got separated from my mom, and she didn't know where I was, and I was supposed to be with my dad, and he was in England, and no one knew where he was, and I got left with my dad's prostitute. Um, at, at times you felt like, what the hell's going on, and you felt like no one loved you. But I always remember saying to myself, and this is powerful. I feel everyone can benefit from this. My opinion. Even if no one else loves you in the world, you should always have one person that loves you, and it's you. And that became the confidence. Like, okay, I love me some me, and so that's I often remember I love myself.
Mm,
If no one else loves me, I love myself, and
mm,
that confidence, that love of myself. Um, I actually even believe it's what kept me from doing drugs. It kept me from being an alcoholic. That coupled with the fact that I grew up in just seeing extreme addiction and realizing, okay, don't want anything to do with that. Like I saw just deep heroin addicts, and oh, I want nothing to do with that. So love of self, confidence, and again, both of those, in my opinion, are choices. That's not something that's you don't have to learn that. You just have to wake up and say, I love myself, and I'm a confident person today. You don't have
mm.
to learn that. That's not something that someone has to teach you. Okay, here's how you take the hammer and nail the nail into the piece of wood. You have to be taught how to do that. All you have to do is wake up and tell yourself is, I love myself, even if no one else does. I love myself, and I am confident today.
Yeah. Our mind is a really powerful tool, but it's a great servant by a terrible master, as the saying goes. What you just share is something that's very simple to execute, to do. But for those that have a mind that's been a tyrant all their life, it's not as simple because that inner resistance is there. So what JT just shared is a simple step what one could do as a way to just self-program oneself. Like I love myself, and so on. So, is there anything else that you wanted to say about a way to cultivate this inner self-love, inner self compassion?
So there are two programs, I call them programs, that I've used for myself. And if you allow me, I'll go through both of those
Let's do it.
formulas. The first one you heard me say, I don't hope, wish, or luck. So
Mm-hmm.
I'll walk you through where that mindset came from. Um, when I was a kid and I would hope my dad was going to come pick me up, he never showed. When I would hope there was something to eat when I got home, it never produced anything. So I stopped hoping, and I switched out hope for belief. Belief forces execution. If you believe that you can get out of the hood, then you've got to execute to get out of the hood. If you believe that you can have the career you want, then you've got to execute to have that. You can't just sit there and believe without execution. Oh, I believe I'm going to have the big house one day. Okay, well, if you believe it, what are you doing to execute to get it? So I eliminated hope. And CK, you appreciate this. So I've got a friend of mine, he's a pastor, and he tells me one day, he goes, man, Jevon, I said hope in my sermon 16 times just last Sunday. He goes, I can't eliminate hope from my sermon. I said, okay, follow me here. I said, do you want me to hope there's a God, or do you want me to believe there's a God? And he's a pastor, CK. He looks at me and he goes, damn. He goes,
Yeah.
I never thought of it that way. I said, see, if I just hope there's a God, I don't have to actually commit to living a godly lifestyle. I'm just kind of hoping this God thing's real. But if you believe, then you have to execute that godly lifestyle that you believe in.
Yeah.
And then wish, oh man, that's just a horrible word. Um, you can wish that you have the big house, wish you have the career, but it's not going to do anything. You can wish upon a star all damn day, and it's not going to produce anything. Even in our house, I've got 4 kids, ages 7, 5, 3, and 2. So we have a lot of birthday parties. When we put the cake on the table, we don't say make a wish. We say make a goal. And so there's no wishing in our house. So the word wish is that ranks right up there with the F word. I rather my kids say the F word to me than say wish.
Yeah.
And then luck, there was just nothing lucky about my life growing up. So if you look back at that, there's no luck. I don't believe in luck. There's execution. There's belief. If you
Yeah.
believe, if you execute, then that's where. So that's one of my formulas. The second one, mindset, choices, and hard work equals success. Mindset. We all hear that alarm clock go off at 4 in the morning. We don't want to get up. And I've had people say this to me. Oh my God, JT, how do you get up at 4 a.m.? I'm not a morning person. Well, you're right. You just told yourself you're not. So if you tell yourself,
Sorry, before you go to the second formula, I'm actually quite curious because you have
yeah,
friends who are pastors and I'm curious to know if you have any, spiritual belief that, that you draw your, inner peace from, anything like that, or
so yeah,
less, it's more about just, I'm the captain of my soul, I'm the master of my fate type of
no, I've got
mentality.
5 pillars in life that I live by: God, health, family, business, and investing. If it doesn't fall within those 5 pillars, I don't do it. So you notice number one was God. No one introduced me to God when I was a kid. I didn't actually learn about God till I was about 13 years old when I lived with my uncle. But I look back now and I see what I've made it through. I see what I've achieved, what I've become. And for people who say, well, I don't believe in God, for me, again, I don't push my views on anybody. For me, I'm kind of like, hey, to get through what I got through, there's got to be a God out there. So I'm a big person of faith, and I believe in God. Yeah.
Beautiful. And then let's see, how do you, I guess, commune or, have that, cultivate that relationship to your own inner spirituality? Do you have a daily practice or
Every
anything
every
like of that
morning,
sort?
every morning, first thing I do, I get up at 4 a.m. First thing I do, say my prayers. First thing, yeah, and my prayers can generally consist of gratitude. Thank you for waking me up. Thank you for the gifts, blessings, talents, and abilities you've given me. Thank you for my family, our home, my career. Thank you for bringing me to where I am now.
Mm,
And it's a prayer of gratitude and thank you more than asking. And here, this is very important to me, CK. You know this. You've seen people do this. When something goes bad, everyone wants to pray to God. When we have a
yeah,
loved one in the hospital,
yeah.
everybody wants to pray to God. We go to prison, everybody finds God. I'm the opposite. I tend to pray even more when things are going great in my life as a show of respect and gratitude for, wow, look at where you've put me, versus because my belief is when those hard times come, and they do for all of us, God's going to be there because I didn't just pray when I needed something. I didn't just show up when
Right. It's not a transactional relationship.
right now I need you. And so
Right.
it's kind of like
Where are
going.
you?
Right. It's like going to the bank for a loan. Hey, I need some money,
That's
but
right. That's right.
and it's funny. I've looked at it like that. Banks will lend you money when you don't need it. When you need it, they won't lend you money. And it's kind of the same thing with God. Rarely do people pray harder when things are going great.
Mm,
Everybody finds God when things are going wrong. Everybody. And so I truly commit to praying even more and giving more gratitude when things are going great for me. And given my lifestyle, man, there's little things that I give gratitude. When I flip on the switch at home and the light comes on, I even tell my kids, hey, you see that light came on?
That's right. It's magic. Yeah, we
Exactly.
didn't have that a few hundred years ago. Yeah, be grateful.
So yeah, there's food in the pantry and the refrigerator. I didn't have those things when in growing up. So yeah, I pray more, harder, give more gratitude when things are going great for me.
I appreciate you saying this because in my research you didn't mention this part at all. So that's why there was a missing puzzle for me. Like how did JT find so much grace and love and compassion, not only for his past himself, but also share with others? I was like, and then because you just preach hard work and determination and like yes, and like where is the source of that? So
Yeah.
I so appreciate you mentioning that. Thank
Well,
you.
and CK, to go on that further too, here's the other piece to this. Um, Sometimes we pray to God and we ask for things, and when it doesn't show up in the form of which we ask for it, we're like, "Oh, there is no God. God doesn't listen to me." But we never take the time to sit back and say, "Oh, I'm healthy. I'm mentally stable. I've got my arms and my legs. Maybe God already gave me the blessing to go out and give me the ability to go out and execute and do it for myself. Maybe that is the blessing, not it didn't show up exactly the way I wanted. And I wanted double stitched and so it didn't show up the way we want it. And we're like, oh, there's no God. And I'm like, I'm healthy. I woke up this morning and I'm mentally capable. That's the blessing. Let me go out and execute.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot we can geek out from there. We can get into the metaphysical in a moment. So I'm curious because you had also publicly said for 45 years you lived an inauthentic life,
Yeah.
and it wasn't until the last few you started living an authentic life, and then it's very obvious, based on all of the talks that you made, you're owning your past, you're owning the your new name, right?
Yeah.
Well, your old name and your new name, and on all of it. So I was curious to know. Well, one thing I did forget to ask: did you take any kind of therapy or anything as a way to really the traumatic past that you experience? Especially the sexual abuse, the molestation part of it. Did you do
No,
anything at all?
actually, I would say so. So I tried back in my 30s to go, and this may be arrogant of me. I'll own it, um, or close-minded. I'll say I don't believe it was arrogant. I tried to go to a therapist, and I remember going in and I asked. It was a lady, and I remember I asked her. I said, "Hey, do you by chance come from a two-parent home?" And she said, "Yes." I said, "Okay." And she went to University of Texas to get her PhD. And I said, "Did your parents pay for your college?" And she said, "Yes." And I said, how was your upbringing as a child? She goes, "Oh, I had fabulous parents and blah blah blah." And then she kind of and then she cut me off. And she said, well, we're not here for me. We're here to talk about you." But what it did for me, I'm like, okay, what are you going to do for me? You don't know anything about the fractured, chaotic background that I come from. And that was the last time I went. I just felt like you don't relate to me. What steps could you possibly give me to be able to move forward? Now, again, that could have been very close-minded and arrogant, but I tried. And granted, it was one time, and then I walked out. What actually worked for me, what was the biggest, most therapeutic thing I'd ever did, was when I did that book for my kids.
Mm.
When we did that book, and I remember I never wanted my book to be public. Never. I wanted 5 copies as a legacy piece for my kids. I wanted it to be passed down as a legacy piece for my great grandchildren, but I never wanted that book to be public. And through a lot of conversations, a lot of encouragement, a lot of support, people were like, "Man, you got to make that book public. There's a lot in there that can help other people." And the help other people is what got me. I thought, okay, if people truly believe this is going to help other people, I'll make it public. Man, I was so nervous when that book went public because there were just deep stories in there that I never wanted anyone to know. I didn't want people to know that my father was a pimp and drug dealer and fathered 23 children. I didn't want people who, for all those years, everyone who just assumed I was Puerto Rican. Guess what? I'm half white, half black. So for all those people who thought I had a degree, guess what? No, I don't. And so I was whatever I had to be to get to wherever I wanted to go in life. And here this book was now going to tell that, this is who he is. I was a monster in relationships, CK. I mean, a beast. Couldn't hold a relationship, didn't know how to treat a woman, horrible in relationships. Here I am with my wife now. We've been together 9 years. It took me 40 years to finally have a healthy relationship. I just did not know how. I didn't blame anybody, just didn't know how to do it. But
you didn't have the skills.
I didn't have the skills, man. Didn't have the tool set, didn't know how. I always wanted to be a good person. I just didn't know what that consisted of. And what was funny is what I found for me, making money was easier than a relationship because money has no emotion. All I got to do is keep making it. Let me just keep making it. But a relationship, now I got to deal with somebody else's emotions, and I can't even deal with my own. And so, I was a monster in relationships. I wasn't fully authentic. But man, I always, no matter what, I always wanted to get better. I always wanted to learn. I always wanted to improve, no matter what age I was. That I can remember always wanting to be better. Even in school, when I struggled to read, when I struggled at math, to this day, CK, I don't hold a pen or a pencil the right way. I read excruciatingly slow, but I always wanted to improve.
Yeah. Oh, I mean that curiosity and desire and determination is the fire is strong in you. It's my friend. It's very easy to see. So I'm curious to know, in terms of overcoming the PTSD or the trauma, is there anything else that you did that really helped you step into that other than the book? So or was the book the singular catharsis that have you, starting to really own the past, own who you were, and own all the the thing that even you did to others as well?
So CK, I got two stories. They'll make sense. Work with me here when I share these. So for me, everything has always been, I'll learn, I'll make it happen, I'll figure it out. So just follow me on this. So back when I was 23 years old, I had got promoted to be the vice president of the Northwest region for a payday loan company. 23 years old. It literally had no business being a vice president of anything at 23. But the gentleman sent me up there because I worked hard. I worked my ass off and I earned that promotion. So I get up there. I'm in Portland, Oregon, and I had never been, that was, I was like, oh man, here I am in Portland, Oregon. I've never been there. But it was beautiful. 30 days after being there, the owner of the company calls me up and he says, hey, I want you to go down to Eugene, Oregon and open up a new office. And I immediately, yes, sir. And he said, you need anything from me? No, sir. He said, okay, make it happen. So I hung up the phone. I sat back in my chair, and CK, I said to myself, where in the hell is Eugene, Oregon?
I love that. You just say yes and figure it out.
I was going to figure, and so then I just went through my steps. I said, okay, step number one, figure out where Eugene, Oregon is. All right. Step number two, and this is like 93, 94. So there was no MapQuest and all, anything else to be. There was no Google Maps. And so then it was like step number two, okay, drive to Eugene. I get to Eugene. I pull over in a parking lot. I'm like, okay, step number three, I guess I got to find a location. I didn't even know what a commercial realtor was. So I drove around, walked around. I looked and I saw signs that said for lease. I said, okay, called numbers, finally got someone to help me. But that was the checklist. And then the light went off, and I go, wait a minute. I've got 3 of these offices in Portland. They all look the same. All I have to do is replicate that here. And so but that's how I learned. Now, to your point, was there anything else that I went through that was therapeutic in opening up? So I share that story with you. This story will make sense. So book comes out January 2017, and May of 2017, my 2 co-founders, Tucker and Zach, say, hey, you're going to go to San Diego and speak. I said, okay, speak to who? And they said, you're going to speak on stage. I said, the hell I am. I go, about what? And they said, you're going to tell your story. Oh, no. And they said, no. You're going to go out. It's a national EO event. You're going to go speak. And so I said, okay, I'm in.
Wait, hold on. But there was a switch in your head from I'm not a speaker to I'm a speaker. How did that happen?
So
or was it as easy as I guess I'm doing this now? Let me just go with flow.
I guess I'm doing this now. And then I sat and I was like, okay, what do I do? And and they didn't help me. They didn't instruct me. So I said, okay, first, how do people speak on stage? So I literally Googled Joel Osteen, the pastor, T.D. Jakes, the pastor, Kevin Hart, the comedian, and Jerry Seinfeld, the comedian. And I watched their stage presence. I watched to see what they did, how they did it, how they performed. And my takeaways were, okay, don't put your hands in your pocket. Don't look down. And don't say, And those were my 3 takeaways. I said, okay, I got that part. So then I went and I wrote my speech out, just kind of wrote my story down and said, okay, this is, and so I rehearsed it, stood in the mirror, kept rehearsing it. So I get out to San Diego and I remember staying in the hotel room, rehearse. So then, the moment comes, I get on stage and I deliver my speech. It's 30 minutes. Man, I remember afterwards, I damn near ran off stage. I go behind the curtain. The gentleman back there, he says, hey, look up. They had a screen back there. And I was getting a standing ovation. And I was like, oh, wow. And then this lady comes running up to me and she says, hey, who's your speaker coach? And just like you saw me do when you said bravado, I was like, what's a speaker coach? And she goes, who trained you on your stage presence, your delivery? And I go, Joel Osteen, T.D. Jakes, Kevin Hart, and Jerry Seinfeld. And so what was interesting about that is when I told that story on stage, and that really opened up to where, okay, man, I just own the hell out of who I am, where I come from, what I endured. And this is the damnedest thing. Some people just stood up and clapped for me because I shared my story. Now, here's the other part of this, CK, and this is very important. Shortly after that day, someone came up to me and asked me what my speaking fee was. Again, I didn't even know people got paid to do that. I knew Jerry Seinfeld and Kevin Hart did. They were comedians. You're paid to make them. I didn't know people got paid to tell a story on stage. And so I was offended when someone asked me what my fee was.
Offended? Why? I don't understand.
Because when I was a kid and I needed money and my mom needed money, no one would give us any money. Here I was now, all the money I could ever ask for, money on top of money. I didn't need any money. And now you want to pay me to tell you about when I was poor and I needed money.
Mm.
And that really, the irony of that really got to me. I'm like, how dare you? Not to this individual, but in my mind, it was like, how dare you?
The idea of it.
Yeah. No one gave me shit when I needed it, when I needed money and I was hungry. Now I don't need the money. And I've worked myself out of that situation. And you want to pay me to hear about when I struggled? And that was a real eye opener for me.
On this podcast, well, number one, thank you for sharing that. That story. I mean, you are a natural storyteller. It's interesting how you approach life is the complete opposite of how I approach life. Meaning, um, I need to kind of survey the landscape, studying the books, and see the best practices, lay out the mental models, and you basically have very little inner resistance. You just say, "Fuck it, let's figure it out," which
Yeah.
is a very opposite approach. I
Hey,
love it.
I'm a burn the ships guy. I'm like, okay, hey,
Yeah, that's true.
we
Let's go.
how are we gonna do this? Yeah, it's now to be fair in scaling the company, I don't treat it the same way. I live by this premise when it comes to business. Know your numbers, know your company. You don't know your numbers, you don't know your company. And so I live by knowing your numbers.
So I actually before we go into the company part, I wanted to rewind to for you to reflect on your hero's journey. You probably know the hero's journey arc, yeah?
Yes.
Okay, cool. So reflect upon that. One of the things we say on this podcast is your biggest wound is the source of your superpower. What would you say is your dharmic path? Like the trajectory of your like what are you here to do? That's a
Oh
big question. So if you need to take some time, I'm
no,
happy to.
I actually this one his I believe I was truly born to do business. I told you about when I first learned how to thought about scaling a company, and then I remember when I was 12 years old. I'm going to date myself on this. Back in the day, you could get a magazine and you could take out the insert and like order the magazine and you could check bill me later, and then you'd send it in. You didn't even have to put a stamp on it. Like it just postage was paid, so you send it in, and then they would send you 2 or 3 issues before they cut you off when they realized you weren't going to pay the bill. So I would do that with business magazines, and I would pretend that I was a president of a company. I don't know what company, I don't know what type of business I
You
was
just
in,
like the title company
but I was a
president.
president
Yeah.
of a
Yeah,
company.
yeah,
I didn't even
yeah.
know a CEO existed. Didn't even know what that was. And so I as far back as I can remember, I always had this thing for business. And um, CK, you'll love this. When I was working at the insurance company, it was my second job. I was the mail boy, and I pushed a cart, and I was a filer. And so one day I'm walking by this conference room, and it said free lunch 401k. All I saw was free lunch. I'm like, oh hell yeah, I'm gonna go free lunch. I'm there. I didn't care what the topic was, free lunch. So I'm pushing my cart, and I remember saying to myself, okay, I'm gonna go to that free lunch later on. So I'm pushing the cart, and then someone was walking by me, and I said, hey, where's conference room 401k? I didn't know that free lunch and learn 401k meant there's a free lunch and learn to cover 401k. I thought 401k was a conference room. And so I went to that lunch and learn and heard two of the greatest words I had ever heard in life: compound interest. When I discovered that you can take $100 and turn it into 1,000 and 1,000 into 10, I, man, that's the
You're
great.
mind blown.
Oh, I'm like, you got to be kidding me. I'm like, this is better than drug dealing. Like, and I literally, I'm sitting there like, this is legal. Like, you can literally do this, and so fell in love and wanted to find out everything I possibly could about stock investing. And so I feel like with business and investing, those were my calling. I do what I love to do in this world, but more importantly, above both of those, given my background, given what I've achieved, what I've been able to accomplish, I do believe in my heart part of why God has given me this is to show others what's possible. Like I refuse to allow anyone to refer to me as a motivational speaker. I'm a what's possible speaker.
Mm.
I'm not here to motivate you, but I am here to show you what's possible. That through everything I've went through, the sexual molestation, the juvenile, the being separated from my mother, the being left with my half brothers and sisters for 3 weeks, and no one came for us, through the hell that I've walked through. I'm what is possible, from my lack of formal education. I still found what's possible in life. So I believe I have a great responsibility, not an obligation, a responsibility to show and teach others what's possible.
I mean, you're certainly doing that with, I mean, every interaction that I've witnessed you personally. So I'm curious to know though, so that was clear to you, that path, that North Star is clear to you how long ago?
What, as far as business?
Yeah, in terms of business, also showing others what's possible.
Oh, showing what others what's possible. The showing what others is what's possible. That probably came to me, yeah, man, 7 years ago when I was at the software company and I became the president of a software company. It really hit me that, oh wow, I'm in a position to be able to go back and teach kids that have gone through some of the hell that I went through and say, hey, guess what? We can be more than a rapper, athlete, or drug dealer. No one told us about this business thing. No one told us about entrepreneurship, that you can be an executive. So it hit me back when I became the president of a software company. And that's when I started going and mentoring high risk youth at the juvenile halfway house and at the juvenile prison.
Yeah. So that North Star became clear to you 7 years ago.
Yeah.
What else? I know that you wanted to come on the show and share some of the mistakes that you made, right? So now that North Star is clear, what are some of the detours and mistakes that you have made as you navigate this path of showing others what's possible for yourself,
Whew.
for your family, for people that look up to you, for you know people that's not you?
The biggest one, we touched on it a bit earlier. You heard me say, I do my best. I don't have a lot of regrets in life. I have remorse for how I treated women when I was in those relationships. That's probably the thing I'm most remorseful for. But even then, I'm remorseful for what they had to endure from me, but it was still a learning lesson for me. And so that was one of my biggest mistakes, is just how I conducted myself in relationships. I just, and so much of it was fear, it was anger, it was frustration, because I never, until my wife, no one actually knew who I truly was. So I was constantly on this seesaw and balance beam of, it's like I want to trust you, but I don't fully trust you, and nobody's ever really stayed in my life, and it was always this push and pull internally with my own mind, and then now you throw somebody else's emotions in here, and they got needs and wants, and I'm like, and so I'm very remorseful for how I conducted myself in those relationships. That was a massive mistake. Um, the other big one, mistake
Because
that, go
do you
ahead.
mind going into that a bit? Because conceptually, I get, and you don't need to share the specific details, but rather the lessons that you learn, right? So maybe you can concretize how you would have said certain things differently, how would have
Oh
maybe
yeah.
the certain skills that you have learned pick up along the way. Because on this podcast, we talk a lot about relationship as one of the deepest spiritual path one could take on, because it's not easy to be a human being. Now you,
Yeah.
as you said, involve another human being, the egos clash and all these other things. So if you could share some of the lessons in a little bit more concretely, that would be amazing.
Number one lesson takeaway for me was, if I'm being very direct, and having to own this, was almost every serious relationship that I got involved in collapsed and went awry because of me. In the moment, it was everybody else's fault. Nope. Her, you said this, you did that. And if I'm looking back at it, it was me. I didn't know how to hold a relationship. I didn't know how to communicate. I didn't know give and take. I didn't understand how to incorporate someone else's feelings, show respect. Um, you know, those were the biggest takeaways for me. The number one was realizing, okay, you need to look in the mirror because you're the problem. You keep blaming everyone else, but you're actually the problem. And that was the biggest takeaway. Even now, uh, love my wife. Love coming home to the same person every night. Love coming home to hearing my kids coming to the same house. Just what most people would call mundane, I call glorious. I love the structure, the routine, the discipline, the consistency, all the things I didn't have as a kid. And but I also know how to incorporate her feelings. I know how to love my wife. Um, if we're going to go down into the basement, CK, I'll give you this one. And no one knew this until my wife about 2 years ago. We're on the couch, we're watching TV. It's Christmas time. And my wife, I don't know, she's probably on Facebook or something. She looks over at me and she says, "Hey, I got a question for you." And CK, tell me if I'm out of line when I go. She goes, "How come you never allow me to initiate sex?" And normally I got an answer for everything. I'll think about it, and then I
You're
got
the CEO guy, yeah.
yeah, I
Guy
got
with
an
the
answer.
answers, yeah.
Right. Here's how we're going to address this. And so I was stunned. I was like, interesting. I don't know. And I told her, I said, let me think about that one. I'll get back with you. About 2 weeks later, I come in and she's in the kitchen. I say, "Hey, I got it. I figured it out." She's like, "Figured out what?" I go, "Why I never allowed anyone to initiate, why I never allowed you to initiate sex." I said, "When I think about it, I never allowed anyone to initiate sex." And I said, and I realized why. That prostitute used to be the person who always initiated sex. And this was just 2 years ago. I never realized that I had never allowed any woman to initiate sex with me. And it wasn't until my wife actually asked that I had to think about it and remember that prostitute always initiated it. And yeah, it's so in those relationships, people didn't know those things, and those things caused tension, and those things called for at times for me, they caused panic. I didn't want people to know that or know that about who's going to want to date or get into the relationship with the guy who's been molested and dad was a pimp. And um, yeah, it was rough. It was like I said, it could beast monster in relationship, but I never wanted you to know why I was.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. I so appreciate the trust that you put in me and the listeners. I know Tucker Max is pretty public about his practice with psychedelics, ayahuasca, and things like that as part of his path to be a better human being. And on this podcast, we do talk pretty openly about this type of things as well. For me personally, I needed to. I'm a super cerebral person. In case you haven't noticed, so I had to learn all of my social skills, through acquisition rather than naturally blessed with it. So plant medicine has been actually tremendous, instrumental for me to actually see what's it like to be in relationship with me.
Yeah.
So I was curious to know if you have had any experience with that, and that may have shown you or giving you some insights about as a way to transform, as you call yourself, that monster in relationships to loving, nurturing, compassionate human being that you are today.
The biggest thing for me, man, on that, and let me back up to two things there. One, you said you had to learn your communication skills or whatever. Man, we all did. Now I learned mine from some interesting places. My dad, man, everyone loved my dad. He was a pimp and drug dealer. He was a beast to women sometimes, but man, everyone loved him. He couldn't drive 10 minutes without someone waving him down. "Hey, what's going on?" And everyone loved him. And I would watch and I would study. He made everyone feel welcome. Even the prostitutes that he would be horrible with, for whatever mind-blown reason, they loved him. But I watched his communication skills. I watched how he addressed people, how he listened to people, how he made people feel. And that left an impression on me. So yeah, we all had to learn our skills, man. I just haven't learned mine from a pimp. But to the other point, man, what's helped me most of all is actually going into a relationship where it was all on the table. Hey, here's who I am. Here's what I come from. Here's how fractured my background is. And if you can accept that, then let's get into a relationship. And let me back up a bit on this. This isn't something I've shared a lot. Maybe, I don't know, a year before I met my wife, I was dating a lady here in Austin. And if I said the name, you probably would know who she is. And she was a white lady, or still is white lady. And so we we were dating for like 9 months.
Mm.
And I don't know how the topic of race had never come up, but one day it did. And I say, oh yeah, I'm half white, half black, whatever. And nothing really came of it. So 2 days later, we get on the phone and she says, hey, I got something to share with you. And I was like, okay. And she goes, hey, uh, I'm in love with you. And I was like, oh, okay, cool, whatever. Okay. She goes,
That was
but
your response?
yeah,
Okay, cool.
well, it was because she went really quick with it. She goes, I'm in love with you, but.
But
And
okay.
so it didn't really give me a chance to respond to anything. She goes, I'm in love with you, but. And she goes, but we can't see each other anymore. And I was like,
Mm,
what? And she goes, yeah, my family would never accept you because I was
mm,
half white, half black.
mm,
And man, I've dealt with that my whole life. And so
mm,
I wasn't offended. I wasn't angry. I was at peace. It
mm,
wasn't the first time I had heard it. I had made peace with that at 8 years old. I learned at 8 years old, everyone is not going to like you. You may have heard me talk about this before, CK. When that lady in the welfare line, my mom and I were standing in the welfare line, and we were waiting for our monthly allotment of food stamps, our handout. And that older white lady looked down at me. She looked up at my mom, and she spit in my mom's face, and she called her a nigger lover. And I remember looking at my mom's face and just watching her wipe the spit from her face, the tears coming down her eyes, the humiliation she had. No one came to her assistance. No one asked if she was okay. And the hardest thing, CK, is she couldn't leave the line. She had to stand there humiliated because she had to feed her mixed race son. And I remember saying in that moment, everyone's not going to like me. And I'm not going to spend my whole life trying to make everyone like me. And so when go back to the story, when she said that, my family would never accept you, I was at peace with it because I had made peace with that back at 8 years old when I realized everybody wasn't going to like me. So
mm.
what was interesting though is I went into the relationship with my wife kind of with a chip on my shoulder. Even on our first date, man, she goes, "Oh yeah, I'm just looking to make some more friends." And I pulled over on the side of the road and I said, "Hey, I got all the friends I need. So if you're just looking for a friend, I can drop you back off." And she was like, "Are you serious?" I was like, "Oh yeah." And she was like, "Hmm, well, let's see where this goes." So we went out. We ended up like on a 7-hour date, and through the course of that date, just told her about my background. But we're not, I can give her every detail on the first date, obviously, but so some very significant pieces, like, hey, I'm half white, half black. Is that an issue? And so uh, what was therapeutic for me, back to your question, is the fact that my wife was the first person who really knew a lot of the darkness up front of where I come from and accepted it.
Yeah, I'm kind of speechless because I think relationship is such a key component to life. Whether it's with your significant other, with yourself first and foremost, of course, and with others, and also and now you're in the role of being a CEO. You're, in the role of being essentially a parent to the rest of the employees. So, where do we go from here? You know, one that I do want to actually mention one thing as part of your superpower. Tucker Max very publicly said about, I don't know if you saw the actual video on your own website. He was acknowledging you how extraordinary not just your EQ but also your social intelligence as part of your superpower. So could you draw the correlate between how you grow up, right? All the worst of humanity has faced to your development of the superpower that you have around EQ as well as social intelligence.
100%, 100%. When you on any given day are worried, okay, am I going to get beat up today for being mixed race? Okay, is this prostitute going to molest me if my dad leaves? How can I maneuver and get my dad to take me with him, and not leave me here with her? When you're just any given day trying to figure out the angle of, okay, how am I going to eat today? The social it's funny when he first brought up EQ to me and social intelligence. I didn't even know what those things meant. Okay, what's that? And he laughed. He goes, "Damn, you're so good at it, you don't even know what it means. It's just something you do." And it came from, how do I learn these lessons? Here's to your point of social. Go back to the insurance company. I used to push my cart, and there was a black guy there. He was like the head of HR, and no matter who asked this question, they would say, "Hey, how are you doing today?" He would always say, "Tremendous." Every time. Didn't matter who asked him, didn't matter the time of day. He was always tremendous. And I remember in that moment, I said, okay, if he's always tremendous, what's my word? And my word's excellent. Any given time, any given day, everyone in the company knows, "Hey, Jevon, how you doing?" "I'm excellent." And what I picked up on is you never knew if he was having a bad day or if he was having a great day, because he was always tremendous. So you just knew that this interaction with him, he was going to be tremendous. And so for me, I picked up on that. I said, you know what? I'm always excellent. Where it has served me is it's a very positive way of thinking, because some people say, it's Monday. Um, it's well documented with me. You can get fired for saying, "Thank God it's Friday around me." Thank God it's Monday. Thank God you woke up on Tuesday, because somebody didn't. Thank God we have this incredible company we get to work with. And so if you have the type of career or you feel about your job or your role that you've got to trade 2 for 5, you're in the wrong place. So if you ever feel like you got to drop a "thank God it's Friday," you need to go find what's going to make you happy, because this obviously isn't it. Or it's Monday. Oh, same old shit. I don't want those people around me. That's a very negative, pessimistic
Yeah.
attitude.
So actually, I have a follow-up question, and I'm very curious about this because what you just said, you have a very low tolerance of entitlement. This like, oh my God, I'm surviving my day, right? And at the same time, you also have tremendous love and compassion for human beings. So I'm curious in how how you actually ride the two, because I get both. Let's see if I can ask my question in a better way. Right. So coming from where you came from, um, do you just not have any kind of tolerance for any kind of complaint from your wife, from your kids, from your employees, of anything at all?
I have had to grow and learn into that, because I did have a very low tolerance. I'll share a funny story with you at my house even. So maybe it's a Saturday and the kids eat lunch about 11. And let's say, I don't know, we go somewhere, we're running errands throughout the day, and 4 o'clock comes around. And the kid's like, I'm hungry. And then my wife was like, oh my God, the kids are starving. And I'm like, the hell they are. They ate at 11 o'clock. I'm like, nobody's starving. I go, do you know what it's like to eat at Friday at noon and you don't eat again and then I go into this big rant and I had to catch myself. Okay, but that's not their life. That's not their
Right.
lifestyle.
Right. It's
You
all
know,
relative. Right.
right. They're
For
like,
them,
hey,
they're starving. Yeah.
right. They're like, wait a minute. We usually have a snack somewhere between this and this. And so, but yes, I'm very, more so for adults. We all as humans, especially adults, we get caught up in our own bubbles. We get caught up in our own surroundings. Um, but when I hear people complain about and it really doesn't happen here at Scribe too much, but anyone complain about their role, complain about what they're doing in life or whatever, it just goes back to the mindset thing. Man, right now, CK, there's a single mom with 2 kids literally doing this right now, walking 1,100 miles from Honduras to try to cross the border into this country. Man, on my worst day of being sexually molested, of being left alone with that prostitute, of being left with my half brothers and sisters, on my worst day, I've never had to face that. I was born here. I was born, so I'm ahead of the game. I was born in this country. I keep everything in perspective, man. I know if I walk outside of my office door right now, I'm looking over there. If I walk outside, I know within a 1 mile radius, shit, somebody will trade places with me in a heartbeat.
Yeah.
Hard to find complaints that will come out of my mouth, man. I look at life as there's a challenge. Let's overcome the challenge. I don't see shit as problems. I don't see things as I just do my best to look at things in a positive light and realize, wow, there's somebody trying to get into this country right now. There's somebody in a hospital bed right now that may not leave that hospital bed. Man, I'm blessed. My kids are healthy. My wife's healthy. The company's doing great. And God, I've made so much money. I've got a phenomenal life.
You do. So if I'm hearing you right, there's the micro and then there's the macro. Whenever you feel any kind of, let's say, negative emotions, you may want to have the impulse to complain. You zoom out to the macro to compare now, this immigrant from Honduras trying to cross the border thousands of miles versus where you are. And there's a way to snap you back to gratitude. Is that what I'm hearing?
And I don't mean this to be disrespectful. You said I find myself in a place where I may want to complain. I don't ever find myself there. I don't do it. I guess because I've done it for so long, it's just natural to me that I'm not going to look at something from a negative position because
I see.
negativity has never solved anything. You
Mm,
can only solve by how can we get through that? That
mm,
mindset alone is a positive because you're trying to get through it. That's not
mm.
oh, this is happening. This happened to me, because my parents got divorced when I was 2. My God, you're 28 years old and you're telling me about your parents getting divorced when you were 2? I
Yeah.
mean, that no, I refuse. And it's not a comparison. I never when people say, I had a hard life, but nothing like yours, nothing like yours. I go, no, no, no. It's not a comparison. You had your journey, you have
Yeah.
your journey, I have mine. We don't compare.
Yeah, it's okay. Great. Let's go there if you don't mind. How do you find then other people's story? Because again, if you look at the absolute, it's pretty obvious who has it worse. But subjectively, maybe for them, relatively, it's still really like it's the worst for them. How do you, Jevon, find empathy and compassion for someone else's quote unquote hardship? Does that make sense? What I'm asking?
It does totally. I usually, because people will usually approach me this way. Well, I don't have that background that you have to rely upon. My life was not that harsh, and I let people know, and this is what they're shocked by when I gave you the Honduras example. I rarely dip back into my own past for inspiration. I just look around me. The mom trying to get into the country, The person who has cancer. I've never had cancer. I've never experienced it. I haven't had any family, so I don't know what that's like. But I know that if you're going through chemotherapy and it's draining the hell out of you, I know that I am blessed that right now God's given me health, so I'm going to focus on that. And so I rarely use my own background as a place of gratitude. I just look around and see, the homeless community here in Austin. I drive and I see some of them, and I say to myself, man, I was like a half hour from that growing up. That could have been me. And then I take my mind to a place of, man, I get to go home to this gated community, beautiful family. Matter of fact, let me give you a human aspect on this for me. Last year, not this Christmas, but last Christmas, I'm driving home. I left the office early. I'm like, I'm going to get home early. We're going to make some popcorn. We're going to watch Christmas cartoons, blah, 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 with the kids. And it was about 38 degrees, which is cold here in Texas. And it was rainy. And so I'm driving and traffic stopped. I mean, I'm talking stopped to the point where I had to put the car in park. And I'm furious. I'm like, what the? And so I text my wife, this is bullshit. I left early. I'm about to lose my shit. And the moment I set down my phone, it hit me. I said, you ungrateful little punk ass. You grew up on bus stops in the winter with 3 feet of snow. You know what it's like to be hungry. You know what it's like to have to get dressed in front of the stove, the gas stove, because the electricity is turned off. And you're sitting here mad because you're sitting in this 6-figure car with $1,000 shoes on, going to a gated community with a beautiful family. Shut the fuck up. And I sat there, I put on Christmas music and joy to the world.
So that's when the general comes out from inside your head to do a little smackdown.
And here's the thing. If I had to say what that equates to for me, it's self-accountability. And if you look in our country right now, man, accountability is just lacking. Everybody's trying to blame somebody else, give excuses, reasons. It's just pointing the finger. Very few people want to take accountability. My wife's got friends who are like, oh, well, if I was such and such person and I had my own cook and I had a nanny and I had a personal chef, I too could be in shape. It's just always a reason.
What?
Yeah, it's always an excuse. Like you don't go to the gym because you don't have all those things. Okay, it's rampant through our country. It's always someone else's fault. And we could go back to the beginning of this conversation. Okay, my dad was black, my mom's white. This is what I'm working with. I don't know if you play poker. Here's the best way I can say this. If my life was a poker hand, I got dealt a 2, a 3, a 6, and an 8. But man, I went all in with my hand. And that's what you have to do in life. Just go all in. I'm not going to make excuses. I'm not going to blame the dealer because, oh, you dealt me a shitty hand. Nope. It's what I got. I'm going to play the hell out of this hand, and I'm going all in. And I refuse to make excuses, reasons, and I damn sure I'm not going to be a victim.
Yeah. I mean, that's really obvious. Do you mind if I ask you some more questions about company culture and so forth?
Yeah, man, let's do it.
Awesome. Thank you. So Tucker talked about your superpower like he's, you have this like literal superpower, in terms of like social intelligence. So for people that they certainly don't have your background, very unique background, how would you say to them as a way to cultivate their social intelligence? To really, and in my mind, my interpretation of what that phrase means is the ability to understand what the other person is listening for and speak into their listening. Is that an accurate, definition
Totally.
from your point of view?
You're pretty much doing it in the podcast. You're sitting here, you're asking me questions, you're seeking to understand. Unfortunately, for so many people who are in quote unquote leadership, they have the mentality that they're supposed to have all the answers. They have the mentality because they have three letters after their name: CEO, PhD, MBA, ESQ, whatever the hell else. That all of a sudden they're now this leader, and I'm like, I made the joke the other day. I said, "Look, man, I had three letters after my name long before CEO," and somebody looked at me like, "What?" I said, "GED." I said, so three letters didn't change much. Um, it's listening. It's actually listening. It's surrounding yourself with people far smarter than yourself, being willing to admit that. I don't ever want to be the smartest person in the room. Here's a good one. They gave out I got some CEO award this past December, and I remember I'm on the phone with the people, and I go, look, I don't understand the whole CEO award thing. I go, I don't actually do the work. I go, yeah, I support the company, and I move some roadblocks and obstacles, make some decisions, set some direction. But the actual execution comes from the company. I said, so here's the thing. If you want to give me an award for hiring, because I figured out how to hire people who are smarter than me. And I live by this. You're only as good as the great people you're surrounded by. That's it. And so it's listening, paying attention, truly listening that I don't have to know all the answers. I don't need to be the smartest person in the room. I don't want to be the smartest person in the room. And that in itself will help raise your EQ, social intelligence, whatever it is. It'll help raise it, because let go of the fact that you're the CEO and embrace the fact that your role is not to know all the answers. Tell people that, hey, guys, I don't know, but we're going to sit here, we're going to figure this out together, and we're going to make some decisions.
Yeah.
Embrace it.
So principally, 100% agree with you, and it's all about listening, and really listening for not what's being said explicitly, but what's being said implicitly, what's said between the lines. But for those people who are listening, and I say, Jevon, I agree with you too. I want to be better at social intelligence, at empathy, at EQ. What books, tactical things, what could do to cultivate that? Because right now you're at, let's say, use a professional sports analogy, you're at the NFL level, and you tell people just work out, then you could be in the NFL. Yes. And like,
Right.
what are the steps? You know what I mean? Like knowing what you know, what are the 80-20 skills you could say, do this, do this, do this to start off?
Here's what I would say. Number one, ask questions, truly seeking to learn. I have learned this about people. Generally, when someone asks you a question, the first question isn't what they're actually asking for. Now, don't get me wrong. You can even see this with kids. If you've got an ice cream cone, you'll hear the kid. They'll say, "Oh, I like ice cream." They didn't actually ask for anything. They just said, "I like ice cream," because they want to see if you're going to offer them some. And it doesn't actually change a lot as you get big, as you become an adult. So a lot of times people will come with a question, and it's not even the question that they're actually looking to ask. So I always go 3 levels deep. So someone comes to me and says, "Hey, how do we XYZ?" Immediately, I'm known for this throughout the company. I rarely will answer a question first time. So if you come to me with a question and say, "Hey, we got to look into this. What are your thoughts on doing this for XYZ?" And I'm like, "Look, I've got my thoughts, but what are yours?" Immediately, give me your thoughts. Then, as they're giving me their thoughts, I'm going to ask another question about their thoughts. So we're going to have a full-blown discussion now on whatever this you've come to me, and rarely am I ever going to give a direct answer. I'm just going to keep pulling information from you. That's the key for me. Someone asked me yesterday, what makes a good negotiator in business? I believe it's actually listening and asking questions. It's not so much, everybody's quick to want to tell you the features and benefits of what they're trying to sell. And the fact of the matter is, okay, I'm going to listen to you. I'm going to ask questions from you. I have to learn, but we're quick to want to get, push our initiative when you have feature and benefits and this is why you should buy it. I want to listen to you first. I want to understand what you want. So the key, the number one thing that I would say to your point, what's something tactical? When someone comes to you with a question, ask what their thoughts are about the question that they're asking.
I appreciate that. That's very tactical.
Yeah.
On the note of joining Scribe, how did you know that this was a sole impact fit? And I use that phrase specifically because professional CEO you could easily join any other organizations and do this. Why did you pick Scribe as the organization, and how did you know that there was a cultural fit for your style as well as what you want to contribute?
So I didn't necessarily know there was a culture fit. And truth be told, I didn't even learn culture until I was at the software company. And, prior to joining Scribe, when I was in sales, I learned that, okay, in sales, all you have to do is be worried about yourself. Kind of goes back to that emotional thing with other people. It's like, hey, I'll do me. And so make money. That was it. So I learned, okay, I want to be the number one salesperson. I learned culture at the software company, and I'll lead you up to Scribe and how this came to be. When I was at the software company, I was hired as the lowest paid person in the company. I was the sales guy, and I sat on a fold out metal chair in a storage closet to make my calls. I'll fast forward, within 2 years, I became the president of the company. And we scaled that company from that storage closet with 13 people to well over 100 people. And we had offices in Austin, Houston, Dallas, and Monterrey, Mexico. And to this day, I don't write code. And so where I learned culture was, as the sales guy, I should have been fired 71 different times. And the reason being is I was toxic to the culture. I was so good at selling, no one could tell me anything. No one could say anything to me. It was all about, hey, I closed it, you need to deliver, get it done. But I then got promoted to EVP of sales and marketing. So then not only was I a toxic person, I created a toxic team of sales and marketing. Like, hey, we're going to be the best in this company. I don't care what anybody else is doing, but we're going to do this. And then I got promoted to president. And I remember I walked in one morning. I'll never forget this. I was the first one in the office. I turned on the lights. And I looked around. I said, holy shit, I'm responsible for all of this now. And it hit me like, okay, I'm only as good as the great people I'm surrounded by. And I'm like, I got to put people first, because if I don't have great people around me, there's no way I'm going to be able to do this. And it took me back to the book I read in my early 20s, Think and Grow Rich. And I'm going to paraphrase. It took me to the story of Henry Ford when they had him on trial, and they said that he was not fit to run a company that big because his lack of education. And I remember when I first listened to this story, it really touched me. But he was on trial, and they were asking him all kinds of just nonsense, Spanish Inquisition, and like, who knows? And then he finally got fed up. And again, I'm paraphrasing. He stopped and he said, "Look, I assure you, for every question that I don't know the answer to, I am surrounded by people that I can go to and get the answer." And it hit me. I'm like, oh, I don't need to know all this. I just got to make sure that we're surrounded by people who know all the answers, who can guide the decision making, that we can have a council with, and make decisions that will best serve the company. And that's where I first learned that, or made the decision. Okay, you got to put people first. If you don't put people first, none of this matters. So I operate by people, process, and profits. So
So
go ahead.
So I'm gonna lovingly challenge you again, right? Because you said you were, a solo high performer. You ran
Yeah.
this sole team of high performance, quote unquote, right, outcome driven culture. Screw everyone else. Let's just go get it. That's how you rise to the position of president. And then right now you are saying you rethink back. You got the president title, and you flip the switch to servant people first CEO, right?
Yeah.
At that moment, that's a huge jump from, because what you were doing was working for you in this smaller scale. Like, it couldn't have been that easy as in, all right, I'm gonna flip the switch to now people first. So if you
Man,
can.
CK, I hate to say it, man, but no, I don't hate to say it. It was truly like when I flipped that switch on to turn on the lights in the office that day, the same switch went off in my head that you can't do this all by yourself. You
Wow.
better surround yourself. Now, I'm going to be fair. Here's the other part. There was a gentleman I worked with, literally to this day, one of the smartest people I have ever met. Man is brilliant. He was a software engineer. He had an engineering degree. Okay, he had the master's degree. He had all the credentials, and he was great at what he did. But I became the president. He sat in a room with me, and this goes back to your proving people. He sat in a room with me, and he said, "Hey, I don't agree with the decision to make you president." He said, "I think it's the wrong decision." He said, "I think it's a bad decision." He said, "But I will get on board." I was like, "Okay." And I remember sitting there. I'm like, "Oh, you dare doubt me?" And I remember thinking that. And I said, "Okay, so I'm going to prove you wrong." And he said, "Okay." He said, "I'll make a deal with you. You prove me wrong, and I'll buy you a drink." And I'm like, "Man, I don't drink." And he said, "That's the highest compliment that I can give you, is to buy you a beer." I said, "Okay." So he, myself, and at the time our chief architect were on a massive sales call in Wichita, Kansas. You can figure out what company is in Wichita. Massive sales call. And we closed the deal. And I was leading the presentation and everything. We closed this deal. So we're at a restaurant afterwards, and he looks at me and he says, "Hey, what kind of beer do you like?" And I said, this is like 2 years after I had been promoted. I'm like, "Well, I don't drink." He said, I always told you I'd buy you a beer if you proved me wrong." I go, "Prove you wrong at what?" He said, "Remember when I told you I felt that was a wrong decision to make you president?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "I owe you a beer." Man, that was one of the greatest feelings ever. I loved that feeling and I didn't drink the beer, but but
It was a symbolic gesture.
yeah,
Yeah.
it was a symbolic gesture. And so um, that in itself, I realized I was still in that prove it mode. And to your point, because he was one and is still one of the smartest people I've ever met, and a good man too. I mean, he took his kids on Boy Scout trips. I'd hear him talk to his wife. He was so nice and loving, and just I really and I regret that I never told him. If I had to say I had a regret, that may be one. He was a good man. He was hard, but he was a good man. And it's I learned a lot from him, but I realized, oh, I got him here. Oh, okay. The lady that does our finance. Oh, she's solid. And I realized, okay, you got all the pieces. Now we got to bring it together and have a true team and environment. But like I said, man, I should have been fired back when I was the sales guy and even the EVP. And then fast forward to Scribe now.
Actually, something just came to me
Yeah.
as you're speaking. I guess I didn't really connect the dots until I had to hear it multiple times. That when you are clear about your North Star and you're clear about the goals you want to hit, and you're willing to put in the work, the hard work, the hours, and all these things to make it work, you don't hold your old identities as I guess, gospel, so to speak.
Yeah.
You are very fluid about the approach you take. You can forgive about the past, just stay in the present, and just be extremely fluid. Is that an accurate recap of your approach to
100%.
life?
100%. And if we write it down, it's happening. Unstoppable.
Yeah.
I refer to myself internally. I always said to myself, okay, I'm like a flood of water. You can take a glass of water and you can drink it, great. Um, but a flood of water, it doesn't matter what's in its way. It's coming through, over, around, under. But a flood of water, it's coming. And I've
Yeah.
always internally, I've always referred to myself as I'm a flood of water. I'm coming. No matter
Yeah.
what, I'm coming.
You're a force to be reckoned with. Reminds me of that "Be like water, my friend" Bruce Lee quote. I don't know if you heard that before.
Yes, yes. Yep.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, I appreciate that. So in that though, so I have a question, perhaps a spiritual question or a mental model question. But we are human beings. We all
Mhm.
have egos, right? How do you make sure that the ego for that desires the recognitions, the respect, the all of that, not to flare up and let it run you? Like, how do you master or discipline your ego so that you are serving your organization rather than this desire to be respected and be the star? Does that make sense?
It does. I feel that it truly goes into acknowledgement. And what I mean by that is, uh, here's a great example. I don't give a damn about being named, CEO of the year or CEO of this. What's important to me are the awards that we've won based on culture. Best place to work in Austin, because it's a blind survey that our tribe members, we call ourselves a tribe, that our tribe members take, and based on their feedback is how we rank. And when we hit number one in Austin, that's huge because, oh, wow, we are doing something right. So the approach is all the little things. I say stuff like this: no one works for me, people work with me. No one's boss. Three letters after my name don't mean anything. If you are in leadership in this company, you are a direct support. You don't have direct reports. Nobody's reporting to you. Your role is to support people because you're in leadership. So it's a whole mentality that you take on of the acknowledgments, all the awards and all meaningless. The goal for me is, how do we create this incredible company culture where people are just knocking down the door to want to work here, where people can sit back and say, wow, even if I don't want to, I can retire from this company, where we put people first. When last year in 2020, when we went shelter in place in March, this, most companies in America took massive revenue hits. We were no different. 2 days after we made the announcement to shelter in place, I announced to the company, I said, look, regardless of what happens, no one in this company will be laid off because of this virus. And it was important to me that we do that because in that moment, people needed stability. They needed reassurance because we had people who had just had babies, had just bought homes, people whose partners and spouses were being laid off and furloughed. So I can only imagine what it was like to sit at home and like, oh my God, what's going to happen with us? So I wanted people to know you were safe. If nothing else, you were safe here. No one will be laid off. And I remember sitting back like, all right, now we got to pull that off. Now we got to make that happen. And I'll be damned, CK, 2020 was our best year in company history.
Yes, that's awesome. I love it. So when you watch other company leaders, because I know you speak at an EO and you speak to other entrepreneurs all the time. How do you discern when somebody like you, who's the real deal, who's basically flipped the org chart and be in the bottom to serve everyone else? How do you ensure that, well, one, your executive follows suit as well, not just say yeah, I get it, but still do wanting to the egoic stroke, and then also how do you look at other entrepreneurs who may say these pretty words but not necessarily being that? Like, how do you discern someone who's an imposter servant leader versus an authentic servant leader?
So we have the incredible position that every Monday we have our executive meeting. So in that executive meeting, there's accountability. There's you are living by the principles and values of this company, and if you're not, then you're not a fit for the role. So those Monday morning meetings, every Monday, it's all about ego checking, making sure that we're in service of the tribe and the company. Again, I don't really care that you're in leadership. That just means you serve and support. Great. Um, it's all about the people that you serve and support. When I'm out in public or I'm meeting other executives or I'm never really interested in those individuals. I'm more interested in their executive teams or the people who they work with, because I feel like, okay, if you're doing what you're saying you're doing, it will show with them. Just like this. Here's a great one. Um, Everyone celebrates Jeff Bezos, and as they should. He was the founder. He was on his hands and knees out there, putting books in boxes, and I get it. But very few people, if I say the name Jeff Wilke, know who that is. Jeff Wilke was Jeff Bezos's president of the company since like 98.
Mm.
So much of that success that you see, it wasn't just Jeff Bezos. It was Jeff Wilke and all those people who were there that contributed over the years. I've always said this. CEOs, in my opinion, are over celebrated. It takes a team of people to execute. Yes, CEOs set some direction. Yes, CEOs make some decisions, but you've got to have the right people in place to execute. If you don't have the right people, none of it matters.
Yeah. Um, you don't know this, but I used to be the chief culture officer of a startup. We went from an idea to 200 plus people. And so everything that you said definitely resonates very deeply with me. People, we are what we make, and if the CEO or the founder, have the right alignment, right, the clear idea of the North Star, as well as the right team around them, it makes it much easier to succeed. And
Yes,
then if you don't have the right fit, especially amongst the founding teams, it's very easy to, no matter what amount of capital raise, the direction you go is still going to be very misaligned, and then the chaos would be amplified further as well.
totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's touch on that a little bit there. When you said capital raise, and it threw me off there for a second. So we're 6 years old, no debt, no loans, no venture capital, no private equity, and we're profitable. And I tell people all the time, I go, no, we're the real damn unicorn, not WeWork. And so because it's in this world of profitability, it's I've just struggled to see, why are companies celebrated that have never made a profit? Isn't the goal to make a profit? And you've got some massive names out there, the Ubers, the Lyfts, the Slacks, have never made a damn dime. And that's mind blowing to me. But and to your point as well, when we're talking about the mindset of people, the way you interact in leadership, I will say, if I had to say I was influential in something, it's the words that we speak. We literally have an internal language Bible.
Mm,
Everyone knows we're not saying hope, wish, or luck.
mm.
That doesn't come out of anybody's mouth in this company.
That's a non-negotiable.
Non-negotiable. Does not. We actually have a language Bible. Even this. Think about this for a second. I know you've heard this. You can see it on TV commercials. You can say, customer satisfaction is our number one driver. Customer
Yep,
satisfaction.
yep.
Think about this for a second. If my wife goes to girls' night tonight and she's sitting there with 5 ladies and someone said, "Hey, how's your husband?" If my wife said, "Oh, he's a satisfactory husband," I'm going to be pissed off. I don't want to be a satisfactory husband. If someone says, "Hey, how's your dad? Is he a good dad?" He's satisfactory, but it's the damnest thing. In business, we're striving for customer satisfaction is our number one goal. Really? Like, think of the mentality of that. I don't want anyone in here to be satisfied. I want people to be fulfilled. I want people to be happy. We're striving for customer fulfillment. We're not striving for satisfaction. What a low bar that is.
Mm, awesome. Are there other tactical things that you could share? Other maybe practices or how you run meetings or things like that as a way to cultivate this empathy, this desire for service more. You came from a very different place, and basically everyone had their own journey. So in company settings, everyone's gonna have different skill sets, right? How do you, escalate and towards this mastery of this skills around empathy and compassion and service?
So I pride myself on operating from a very common sense third grade level. One of our company principles is ask questions. I don't believe there's a dumb or stupid question. I got to give love to my third grade teacher, Mrs. Dudek. She said there was no dumb or stupid question. Man, I've been asking questions ever since. I built
Is
a
that the
career.
teacher that threw the shoes at you?
No, that was Mrs. Porter. That was ninth grade English. No,
You were
Mrs.
a
Dudek.
trouble kid since you
Oh
were very
man,
young.
yeah, she didn't mess around. But yeah, Mrs. Dudek said there's no dumb or stupid question. I've been asking questions ever since, man. I built a career on asking questions. And so the culture here, you know this, and I say this to people in interviews. Everyone has worked at a company where you can get fired for asking too many questions. Everyone's worked at one of those places. Here, you can literally get fired for not asking enough questions. If you make a mistake and it's by way of you didn't ask a question because you didn't want to look dumb or stupid, you're not a culture fit. Because I will sit in meetings. You saw this firsthand. So this isn't just me preaching, rhetoric. You saw when you said bravado. I don't even know what that means. I sit in meetings still. People have gone to Harvard, Duke Law School, University of Chicago. I'm sitting in meetings and I'll say, "Oh, time out. What's that mean? Tell me what that word means." And I'll stop a meeting so I'll understand. And I want people to realize I'll stop a meeting to ask a question. Everyone should stop a meeting to ask a question if you don't know what it means. More importantly, like I said, I operate from a third grade common sense level.
Mm.
Everyone's going to sit here and go, "Oh man, yeah, that's true." When I say this, how many times have you been sitting in a room and you wanted to ask a question and you didn't ask a question, and then someone else asked your question and you thought, "Oh, good, I'm glad they asked that." Every time you have a question, there are 3 to 5 other people in the room that have the same question. And the bigger the room, the more people have the same question. So when the question pops in your mind, ask the damn question. So I'm very big from a culture standpoint on asking questions. Optimism is one of our values, putting people first, impeccable attention to detail, things that you don't actually learn in school are things that have served me very, very well. Here's another word from a customer standpoint. People will pay us up to $120,000 to publish their book. People are not paying us to think; they're paying us to know. And
Mm.
so when we're on a call with an author, when we're interacting with an author, no, 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 don't you dare say think. They're not paying us to think. They're paying us to know. And
Mm.
people have said, "Well, what do you mean?" I said, "I'm going to give you the ultimate example. CK, if you and I right now decide we're going to go climb Mount Everest, it's about $80,000 to hire a tour guide, aka Sherpa, and they're going to take us up this mountain. So you and I are throwing on our backpacks, we're high fiving, like, yeah, we're gonna knock it out. We're going up the mountain, whatever." And then we turn to the Sherpa and we say, "Hey, are we going this way?" If that Sherpa says, "No, I think we're going to go," hold the hell on. I'm dropping my backpack. I'm like, "What do you mean you think?" I want to be told, "No, we're going this way, weather permitting. We're going to base camp here, weather permitting. We're going here. And if the weather gets too bad, we're coming back down this way." I'm not paying you $80,000 to think. I'm paying you $80,000 to know.
Yeah,
And
you want someone with certainty.
yes,
Hmm. Yeah, who is not wishy-washy
Exactly.
about the approach.
So
Yeah.
little things like that, it's all little things added up that make the culture, that make the difference, that set the tone. There's no one big brick or rock or anything like that. It's all the little things that you have implemented, and you do it with consistency. If I had to say there was one word, if people want to say, well, what's the one thing? Consistency. You have to consistently execute on those things.
Was there a mistake that you made that really cement those lessons? Business lesson for
You want to
you?
know? You want to know where? Okay.
Yeah.
My uncle Bobby, when I lived with him, he took me in because nobody else. I had nowhere else to go, so he took me in. And my uncle Bobby used to own duplexes, rental homes,
Mm.
and this is back, Section 8 welfare. And back in the day, there were no guidelines. Like people could just treat the house like shit. And then when they moved, they didn't have any guidelines. You didn't get kicked out of the Section 8 program. Today, you get kicked out of the program. But anyway, so people would move out of these houses, and CK, they were horrible. Imagine the worst episodes of hoarders, dirty diapers stacked up in the corner, rancid food in the refrigerator. They were
Oh
just
my God, you just painted a
nasty.
picture in my mind. That's terrible.
Yes. And so my uncle Bobby would say, "Okay, you guys need to go clean out the houses." So he'd drop myself off and a couple of my cousins, and literally he'd go play golf, and he'd leave us there, and he'd tell us, "Okay, I'll be back in 4 hours, 6 hours." And so we had to clean everything, and that is where I learned impeccable attention to detail. So my uncle Bobby would show back up, and he'd check, is there any dust or crumbs in the corner? He'd walk through, look at the floors, and just check everything. On this one occasion, there was such a fine crack in one of the windows. Like you couldn't even see it. It was in the corner. And he goes, "Hey, how come you guys didn't take this window out?" And I'm like, "Uncle Bobby, you can't even see it." He says, "What this means here also represents what's in there. So if I can see it from out here, that means the inside of this house isn't clean as well." And he said, "You need to have attention to detail in everything you do." And that stuck with me. And I thought to myself, wow. So even now, I walk around. It's one of our principles in the company by way of Uncle Bobby, impeccable attention to detail. If I'm in the restroom and there's other offices here in our building, and there's paper towels on the floor, I pick them up, put them in the trash. What, am I so great that I can't bend over for 2 seconds and pick up some paper towels and put them in the trash? So yeah, impeccable attention to detail, and that's a lesson that I learned that didn't come from business. It literally came from my uncle Bobby, and I teach my kids that. They run around the house all the time. Impeccable attention to detail. So it's I feel that it has served me very well.
Do you so this is just totally a curious question. Do you so my some of my CEO friends would basically intentionally put themselves in hard, really difficult situations. So for me, it's like ayahuasca ceremonies and things like that, just physically intense, Spartan race, ice bath, right? This type of situations. Some others, they will basically become homeless for a couple of weeks, some random city
Which I
somewhere.
gotta say, CK, which is bullshit, because you when you know that you've got 25 grand in the bank, 100,000, $500,000 in the bank, you're never really truly homeless. You're not putting you know that there is an end to what you're doing. I've always been intrigued by people say, "Oh, well, I want to experience what it's like to be homeless." When you don't have anywhere to go and you don't have any money, then you're homeless. When you know that you can get up off that park bench at any given moment and go home, you're not homeless. You're just choosing to be in a situation.
Right, the circumstances, but not the actual experience of desperation, things like that.
Exactly, and
For
that's
sure.
the homeless problem is when I mean, and I guess why I take offense to it is because when I was 13 and I was on that bus stop and all I had was that little suitcase, I was homeless. I didn't have a job. I didn't have any money. My mother was in Texas. She didn't know where I was. My dad was in England. He didn't know where I was. I had nowhere to go. So when I hear CEOs role play being homeless, I'm like, man, get the hell out of here.
I managed to get a reaction out of you.
Yeah, you
So
did.
I did. So maybe let me phrase it in a different way. Are there things that you put your executives or your kids in a simulated environment so then they can have maybe not the actual experience, but a simulated experience of hardship or adversity or, you know, difficulties or challenges, such that they would have more wisdom and insights and gratitude, anything like that?
I haven't done it with my children yet. Like I said, my oldest is 7, so I haven't done it with them yet. I very much plan to, but here with the executive team, constantly, I'll say I'll make up a scenario. Okay, so this happened. So and so resigned. Whatever. Can't get a hold of me. What are you going to do? Slack me the plan. What's that look like? Well, how are you going to execute this? What are you going to do? This past Monday, I sat there. I said, hey. Serious question for you all. If I resign, who's going to take over the CEO responsibility? What are you guys going to do? I got some interesting answers. One person said, shit, I'm out. I said, I'm
That's
out.
flattering.
Right. I said, I'm out. So someone else said, well, I'm going to try to figure out how we get you back first. But then I said, okay, put all that aside. What do you all do? And what was interesting is like, well, we probably end up having to bring someone in from the outside. I said, okay, so then what? And I took them through this. I said, you got to remember, our company has been built on its current structure. I said, if you go bring someone from the outside, then you also have to realize that you're going to have an exodus of people who are like, well, that's not what I signed up for. They don't know that person doesn't know the culture. And you could see their face like, oh, never thought of that. And so we'll go through scenarios like that of really testing the thought process. How would you execute this? What would you do? But I don't know. I've not put them in any type of ayahuasca situations or anything like that.
Well, I'm being half serious when I asked this question, because adversity reveals one's character,
Mhm.
and you came out shining and bright in spite of all the serious challenges and molestations and, you know, people being violent at you and so forth. So even though it's not the real deal, things like Spartan race or, you know, ice bath, these type of like intense type things does give people glimpses, or you even glimpses of like, oh, okay, so this is, you know, how they're like on their adversity kind of a thing. So hence why that question.
It's interesting. Think about this last year, CK, the virus disruption, the protests, the election, current time. I don't feel the need to put the team under any additional stresses.
Sure, of
It,
course.
it's it, what I'm looking for now is to create an environment of safety, support, um, consistency, and people. Again, world may be on fire, but all is well at Scribe.
Mm, that's a very wise statement you just made, right? Versus me being an emotional savant asking you about questions on challenges. What you just made actually is a very wise statement. Do you mind if I ask you some rapid fire questions more
Yeah, let's
quickly?
do
Is
it.
that cool with you? Thank you
Yeah.
so much. Um, what's so these questions came from the audience. So what is one of the best investments that you have ever made? It could be
Oh man.
money, time, relationships, etc.
So when you said investment, I'm going to give you the first thing that came to my mind.
Sure.
Um, because I don't see my wife as an investment. She's the greatest blessing I've ever had, and then second
Yeah.
to that are my kids. But when you say investment to me, first thing I think of are stocks. So I got to. You saw how excited I got. Back in, man, what was this? 13, maybe 2013. American Airlines filed bankruptcy. And I was going through there. I love business. I love studying. Why did this happen? What was going on? Why did the CEOs make this decision? So I'm a student of business. I can watch documentaries on business all day. So American Airlines filed bankruptcy. And I'm like, damn, another one's going down. TWA went out. Pan Am went out. Now American Airlines. What's going on? So I started studying their financials. And I'm like, wait a minute. They've got $4 billion in cash. I'm like, they're not filing bankruptcy. And so I started digging into it. They couldn't come to terms with the pilots union, the flight attendants union. And hell, I didn't even know the baggage handlers had a union. So I'm like, oh, they can't get all this together. So they just said, okay, fine, we're going to file bankruptcy. Stock went down to like 25 cents. And I said, man, they're going to come out. They're going to come out of bankruptcy. I said, or somebody's going to buy them. So I got in, and again, me being the ignorant person that I am, I don't say that as a negative. No one had ever taught me that you don't put 90% of your net worth in any one investment. So at the time, I put 90% of my net worth into American Airlines. And I said, okay, I just need the stock to go to $1. And so the stock went up a little over $1, and then it came out that the bankruptcy attorney approved American Airlines to buy maybe 4 or either 40 more jets. And I said, see, I knew they weren't. Nobody's going to give you approval to buy new jets if you're going bankrupt. And then the stock jumped up to like $3. I was like, oh, sweet. Then the stock got up to about $5. Then word came out that not United Airlines, it was US Air was thinking about a merger. Boom, stock went up again. So long story short, got in at 35 cents, got out at 13 and change. Best investment I ever made.
Awesome. Thank you.
And then here in the office too, man, as Scribe, we have a channel called Investment Channel. I literally post every stock that I buy so everybody can see it. I tell you what I bought, how much I bought, when I'm selling it. So there's no bullshit of someone on one of the financial channels. Well, we recommend, but they don't actually own the stock. Nope. I show you how much I spent, how many I bought, when I'm going to sell it, what I'm going to do. Everyone in here knows, I showed in 2016, I bought, I think it was like 3,500 shares of Amazon for $749. And it is documented on there and people see it. And, today, I think Amazon's probably like 3,300 a share.
Wow. That question wasn't meant for a specific investment, but I love the direction that you're taking it.
Like
Since
I said,
you have Nassim Taleb.
When you say investment to me, that's what came to my mind. So you said rapid fire. I'm thinking, okay, first thing comes to mind. That's the answer I'm giving.
Yeah, since you have Nassim Taleb on your as one of your clients, I think could be a really interesting exercise since you love investment so much to have, an angel list like a syndicate, right? So you can essentially have your own fund kind of a thing.
Yeah.
So people can invest with you. Any other investment that you wanted to mention in terms of time, money, relationships, etc.?
Best investment is like I said, creating your 3 to 5 pillars. What is it in life where you can't do it all? It's just a fact. I love golf. But until my kids are all old enough to take golf lessons and play with me, I'm not going to spend 4.5 hours on a round of golf and take that away from my kids. So God, health, family, business, and investing. That's it, man. If it doesn't fall within that, I don't do it. That right there is the best investment I've made in my life. There, when people are running around talking, CK, you've heard me talk about this. People are running around talking about work-life balance. Everybody attacks work. Don't work 60, 70 hours. Don't check your emails in the morning. Oh, we should only have a 4-day work week. No one checks themselves on life. How about you not binge watch Friday through Sunday and have the nerve to wake up on Monday pissed because you haven't achieved your dreams and goals? How about you
Mm.
not go to the bar Thursday through Sunday, then be pissed on Monday because you haven't achieved your dreams or goals? So no one checks themselves on the life side of things. Don't complain that you're 20 pounds overweight, but you just went through the drive-through at McDonald's. And when you say work-life balance, everyone attacks work. No one attacks what they're doing in life. And think about this. Last time you heard someone say, man, we binge studied our 401k all weekend. Never.
I love how you're such an advocate and a defender for the higher self,
Yeah.
right? Versus, you know, uh, giving forgiveness to the human side, right? The lower self, sort of a thing. So I appreciate that. Okay, next question. Um, any specific advice for people who have been laid off due to COVID?
Whew. Uh,
Yeah, these are all simple questions, of course.
Yeah, that one isn't at all because there's so many facets to it. I dare to even try to answer that because my wife and I were just talking about this last night. If you're a single mom and you've got two kids and your kids are having to do distance learning and you got laid off, like what are you supposed to do? So there's so many facets and answers and details that go into that. I don't know that I can even touch that one. I will say this. I'll give one scenario. If I'm a single person, I got laid off, I'm collecting unemployment. Man, I'm studying every damn thing I can get my hands on for the craft that I'm interested in, be it marketing, be it investing, be it whatever it is. Man, 8 hours a day. I'm obviously sending out my resumes. I'm trying to find employment, but the rest of the time, oh man, I'm doing nothing but immersing myself into the craft that I want to be an expert at.
Beautiful. Thank you. What does JT do when feeling unfocused?
When feeling unfocused. When I'm here at the office, I'll walk around and look about. You can see part of it behind me. So we've got this massive wall in the conference room. We call it the stadium, and it's nothing but the books we've published in here. I'll walk around and look at what we've accomplished. This company was founded in Tucker's condo, and I remember I started with him and going to his condo for the company. And I look at what we've become now, how many people we have, the year we had last year. um, we short answer, I focus in on what we've accomplished as a focal point to know what can be done. And that's where that brings me back to be able to focus. Even when so that's what I do when I'm here at the office. I'll walk around upstairs, look at what we've accomplished. I see how many people we've hired and I get to work with, and that helps me bring me back to that perspective and gives me focus. When I'm at home, um, this is going to sound weird. I sit in parts of the house that most people wouldn't. I go sit in a corner of the house that, for what, there's no need to sit there, but I look at the house from a different angle. Uh,
Mm.
I may go sit in my daughter's bedroom and look at the house from a different angle. Um, I it's always attached to gratitude. Gratitude brings me back to focus. In is the short answer. Even when I go outside, man, to take out the trash in the garage, I look at the fact that there's two cars in there, 3-car garage. Um, I admire my garage. It's just a garage, Yeah, it's got the nice floor and stuff like that. But I'm thankful I have a garage, and so gratitude always gets me refocused.
Thank you for that. When you're dealing with someone else who may feel a little entitled, who may forget about this gratitude thing that you talked about, how do you gently and kindly remind them about being grateful, or you don't or you don't do it so gently?
I'm not always very gentle about that one, because none of us are entitled to anything, and it's for me, life is a true blessing, and we're not entitled to tomorrow. So if you get it, it's a blessing. Take advantage of it. Make the most of it.
So what do you say to them though? You say exactly that?
Yes, I say that, and sometimes I do. I'll give you one. When I interview, so everyone who gets hired into the company has to be interviewed by me. I'm the last person that you speak to before you're hired, and I always ask people. I said, okay. Most of the people have done some type of research on my background, so they know, some of the story. I said, okay, you know my background, you know where I come from, fractured, blah blah blah. I said, now give me the hardest thing you've ever overcome. I said, and don't tell me it was a thesis paper when you were getting your degree. I don't want to hear that shit. I said, give me the hardest thing you've ever
Give me
overcome.
the real deal.
Yeah. And then what's interesting is because immediately they realize they're in a place where, oh, he led with, my background. So they can't come with some little soft ass story. So they're going to have to dig deep and give me something. And depending on what it is, that really shares a lot about this person. I remember one time we did a group interview, and it was the only time we ever did it. We did a group interview, and I went around the room and I asked everyone in the room, I said, hey, why do you think you're here? How do you think you made it to this point of the interview? And I remember one lady said, she goes, because I went to Yale. And I was like, oh. There was such a part of me that just wanted to write them like, you just need to go ahead and leave now.
But you were polite. You were polite.
Yeah, I let her finish out the interview, but I'm like, you realize that has zero to do with you, especially with me. Like, that holds no bearing on you being here whatsoever.
Oh my gosh. That's a funny story. Thank you very
Yeah.
Okay. Last question, then we'll complete.
Go two more, CK. I'm sure you had two more there.
Oh man, I can speak to you for hours.
All right, let's do two more, man.
You are just, a wellspring of wisdom. So what are some bad recommendations you hear out there for young professionals?
Oh, man.
That just like drive you like, oh my God, I can't believe these people are giving out such bad advice that makes you skin crawl, that kind of advice.
It's here's what immediately popped in my head. Like I said, rapid fire questions. I'm giving you the first thing that comes to my mind. When I was the president of the software company, I think they were having like a hackathon or something one night, and I hung out. Obviously, I wasn't hacking shit, but I was hanging out with everybody. And
I love that. I weren't hacking shit.
I wasn't hacking shit. So I was hacking up some pizza or something. But one of the guys there, he heard me say, I go, look, man, the ultimate goal is to create a company where people can retire from. I said, that's the ultimate goal. I said, if you go back to our grandparents, our great grandparents, man, they worked at jobs 34 years. I go, no one does that anymore. People used to actually pay off 30-year mortgages. No one does that anymore. The average person is in a home 5.5 years. That's sad. When you think about the memories that are made in a house, the Christmases, the Thanksgivings, the birthdays. But then he said to me, he goes, oh man, I'm so relieved. I go, why? He goes, my guidance counselor told me that I should find a new job every 2 years. And I said, how long have you been here now? He said, like 18 months. I had already started looking. I'm like, why would someone give you that dumbass advice if you find a great place that you love working, if you're making the salary that you enjoy, you love the people you work, why would you leave? And he goes, well, I thought that I was supposed to. And I'm like, oh no. I go, I said, that's some horrible advice. So that was the first thing that I thought about. As a matter of fact, I was talking to a person just yesterday. One of our tribe members asked me if I'd speak to her cousin, and their cousin called me, and he said that he was thinking about leaving. I said, how long have you been at the company? He said, 3.5 years. I said, how old are you? He said, 28. I said, man, you need to stay till you're at the company for 5 years. And he said, why? I said, people your age right now, I said, you guys have worked at 7 different places by the time you're 28 years old. I said, when you're 30 and you've been there 5 years, You can walk into an interview and say things that other people can't. You're
Mm,
loyal. You're loyal. You're looking for longevity. You're looking for a
mm,
company you can grow with. I go, very few people can say that now. And
mm,
I said, people say it, but the resume doesn't show it. Your resume will show it if you stay there 5 years. And he was like, wow, that's I go, now you've just increased your value in the marketplace just by staying there for 5 years. I said, you'll be 30. I said, 30. That's nothing.
mm. So I have a question personally. You
Mhm.
effectively have two jobs. You have the role of a CEO, and you're also very generous in going out and speak to people like me as a speaker. How do you balance the two? Or like how do you reconcile in your mind to do both and
God,
do it well?
God, health, family, business, and investing. You prioritize, man. You can't. Um, and here's something you said. Share some wisdom. There's no success without sacrifice. I don't care who you are. You will sacrifice for success. You have to. You cannot be successful without sacrifice. And I'll take it to the highest levels. Watch this. LeBron James. Everyone sees LeBron James, $100 million a year, has his own shoe, championships, but no one talks about that when LeBron James is on an 11-game road trip. He's not with his family. He's missing his kids' um, games and plays and activities. He's not there. He's not there for family dinner. He's not there to tuck them in. And so that's sacrifice. So it doesn't matter he's making $100 million. It's sacrifice. And people can sit there and say, oh, well, for $100 million, I do. Well, that's great. But you know what? You can't recreate the actual birthday. I don't care how much money you have, you cannot recreate the actual birthday. And so he sacrifices. Now, I'll take it up a level. Look at these presidents: Bill Clinton, George Bush, Barack Obama. When all three went into office, they all had young daughters. At the highest level, and we know the role of a president, they missed birthdays, they missed events, they missed holidays, they missed family dinners. There is zero success without sacrifice. You will have to sacrifice something. The goal in life is to find the things that are most meaningful to you and be cutthroat with everything else. Don't let it get in the way. Don't do this. Don't go to dinner with your friend that you haven't seen in 3 months, and you're enjoying them. Oh gosh, it's CK, I ain't seen you in forever, man. How you doing? Whatever. And then your food comes out, and you actually have the nerve to sit there and take 3 pictures of your food because you're going to post it on Instagram. And we all know you never get the first one right. So you take 3 pictures of it, you post it on whatever social media platform, then you set your phone down. So CK, man, what have you been up to? Da, da, da. And then what do? I pick my phone up. Oh, I got a like. Oh, sweet, sweet. So I put it back down. Oh, so what else, man? What else is going on? Then I pick it up. God forbid I get a comment. Oh, now I gotta say something. What the hell? One,
Mm,
nobody gives a fuck what you're eating for lunch. I don't care. You're wasting quality time with that individual, spending time connecting with that person, showing them you appreciate the fact that they took time out of their day to spend with you, and
yeah.
you're posting a picture of your food.
It's still it's, in my mind it's the ultimate gift.
Yes,
The presence and the time that they
time.
can never ever get back. You can always
Never.
make more money. Can't get back the
Always.
time.
I can always make more money, man, but I cannot get back more time. And it's for me, man, having my 4 children, it's like having a human calendar. You just see how fast they grow. My 7-year-old, it just seems like yesterday that she was the same age as the 2-year-old. And here they are. I got a 7-year-old and a 2-year-old. Man, you cannot get back the time. And I'll be damned if I'm going to waste mine telling you I just checked in at the gym or taking a picture of my food or posting a picture at the beach and saying gratitude. Well, if you're so grateful, enjoy the damn moment instead of trying to impress everybody that you're at the damn beach.
I look forward to hearing this particular point as your kids grow up, and because they're born into this whole world of social media, and you know, my status is based on the number of followers and
Hmm.
likes and so forth. I'd be very curious to know how you will be parenting your young kids.
Man, I'm gonna try to keep my kids off. I say try. My wife and I talk about this. If it's up to me, my kids won't have a phone until somewhere maybe seventh, eighth grade. The other thing is, and this isn't again, some people won't agree with this. My opinion is what we do with our kids. My kids go to private Christian school, different set of values, and so for me, my goal is that my kids don't have a cell phone until they're in seventh grade. I don't want them to be on social media and feel that their self worth is built on how many likes they got. It's such bullshit. Do you like yourself? Do you love yourself? I don't give a damn if someone that is just connected to me on whatever social platform likes my post, likes my outfit. Do you like it? I tell my daughter all the time. She'll come out and she'll have on an outfit and she'll say, "Dad, am I pretty?" I said, "Yes, but do you work hard?" I said, "Because I know a lot of pretty people who don't work hard, and that's not a good combination. So, do you work hard? Are you kind? Are you smart? Tell me that." And she's like, "Yes." I said, "Okay, then you're pretty."
I love that. Always a chance to, because you're acknowledging her for the effort versus the looks. Because looks, really didn't have anything to do with. She was giving this
Right.
gene versus the effort, the kindness, the gesticulation, the words that's coming out of her own sovereign self, her own agency, rather than
Yep.
this thing that's inherited thanks to the good looking parents that she's got.
It's interesting, man. Every day, sometimes 2, 3 times a day, my kids, I say, "Okay, what are your things?" I'm smart. I'm great. I'm a leader. Hard work is greatness. Positive attitude, and stand up for yourself. And they have to recite those 2, 3 times a day.
Mm, I love it. Jevon JT, thank you so much for sharing so generously with us, with me, your presence, your time, your hero's journey from the darkest places and to where you are today. I mean, honestly, I'm really, really inspired. Just the kindness that you exude, the presence you have, this fierce stands for agency, for sovereignty, that we can thrive in spite of whatever circumstances, challenges that comes our way. And you do it with kindness and generosity and respect. I just so appreciate you as a new friend, as a guest, and as someone that I look up to. You inspire me to be even more open with my own past, with my own humanity, as a teaching tool to share with others that they too can overcome or to achieve their dreams. So thank you so much for being the light.
My man, CK, incredibly humbling to hear that. I appreciate it. This was good stuff, man. It was a great conversation. I feel like we without the food, we got to go to lunch together.
For sure. For sure. I look forward to seeing you in person, and hopefully at some point we get to do this again.
Excellent, my man. You tell me when, we'll make it happen.